Good evening and welcome to the Cancer Education Series brought to you by MercyOne and Above and Beyond Cancer. As you can see tonight, we're outside, which is a special edition of the Cancer Education Series. My name is Chris Goodale, and I'm the Executive Director of Above and Beyond Cancer. For this special occasion, it's still my pleasure to introduce the founder of our organization, Dr. Dick Deming, who will introduce our speaker for this evening. Dr. Deming?
Outside University Cancer Center, our Clive campus, and we're taking the opportunity to talk about growing and eating fresh produce. And our guest tonight is one of our oncology dietitians, Barb Wisnieski, and Barb has been with us many times before. Barb trained at Iowa State University. An important part of the cancer team is our dietitian, and our dietitian's role is not only to help those that are having difficulty with eating because of their cancer or their cancer treatment, but also to make sure that once we are cured of our cancer, that we're eating healthy and helping to any future cancer. And one of the projects that Barb and Crystal were instrumental in getting started is this, that is not only ornamental, but also grows some fresh produce for our patients. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Barb Wisnieski. Thanks for being here, Barb.
Thanks for having me. This is a dream of mine. This garden in and of itself, and also me presenting out here has been a dream for me. So I'm so glad to be here tonight to talk to you a little bit about what the Community Healing Garden at MercyOne Cancer Center is, and a little bit about more about a plant-based diet and why that's important for not only cancer survivors, but really for all of us. So I found a good place for me to start tonight would to actually just read the mission statement that Crystal Tallman, my colleague dietitian downtown at the Downtown Mercy Cancer Center, and I came up with for the garden, because it really is a good summary of what we wanted to accomplish out here in the garden. So the mission statement states, the mission of the Community Healing Garden at MercyOne Cancer Center is to provide a peaceful outdoor environment for cancer patients and their loved ones to reflect, rest, re-energize in their time away from cancer treatment. The garden also provides an opportunity for therapeutic exercise for patients who are interested in assisting with weeding, watering, harvesting vegetables and herbs and fruits, and other gardening tasks that are involved with the maintenance of this beautiful space. As a living classroom, nutrition educators can use the garden as a tool to teach the benefits of a plant-forward eating pattern through classes, educational displays, and other cancer center sponsored educational events. So with that, I have to tell you, I'm so glad to be here today. This is our very first time in the garden. We tried to present once before, but unfortunately the rain caused us to go indoors. So tonight it's a beautiful night. We've got a little bit of sun, a little bit of overcast skies, and it's a great night to be in the garden in Iowa today. So this garden was actually an idea, like I said, of my colleague Crystal Tallman and I, and we developed this idea, or we came up with this idea looking from my office window, which is actually right across the parking lot. We saw this beautiful green space and knew of a dietitian on the East Coast who actually was a 3-time cancer survivor. And she had an idea of doing a victory garden involving cancer patients in both the raising of vegetables as a way to promote a plant-based diet. So we reached out to her personally and asked her questions about, like, how could we do this at Mercy Cancer Center with really nothing more than an idea and a wish. And she was greatly supportive, gave us some ideas. And so with that, Crystal and I went to our Mercy Auxiliary Foundation, or our Mercy Women's Auxiliary, and asked, they had a grant application and we applied for a $5,000. And with that $5,000 grant, we partnered with the landscape company who manages Mercy Properties and asked them to partner with us with building raised beds. We felt like raised beds were the best way to go to garden. There was, kneeling or stooping. It's very easy to take care of vegetables that are in a raised bed. And they showed up with not only physical help, but with plans for these garden beds. And a little bit later in the presentation, I'm going to actually go over to the raised beds and show you what they look like. But we built 8 beds. We were able to place 4 of them on this property. with the wish of developing this into a much bigger cancer garden at some point. That was 2013. A few years later, just a few years later in 2015, we again developed a committee. We took a look at this land and we were able to develop the large garden that it is now. And what you see, what you can't see here is that we have a lovely fountain feature. We have all sorts of plants, beautiful plants that are blooming. We have signs that say hope, faith, and love. And it's been so cool for me as a dietitian with a window facing this garden to actually see what goes on in this garden during the day. I have seen patients and their loved ones in the garden checking out what's planted out here. I've seen people picking produce. I have seen couples in front of the love sign taking selfie pictures, which is very touching. I've had patients meet me out here to do some education. And so this garden is much more than we even imagined it could be. It's a great place to come and just hang out between treatments, great place for family to gather. Another one of the really special things that I did see too was just last year at the end of the season was a patient finished treatment and all of her friends surprised her out here, sitting with chairs and treats and balloons and banners. So this has become, besides just a living classroom, it's become so much more than that. So we're so excited to have this place, and we're hoping that more people with promotions like this will know that it's here and take full advantage of it. So with that, my presentation tonight is on plant forward eating. And I know that in the last couple of weeks, we've had two other dietitians talk about nutrition. One of them, Lindy Buckingham, who works with Above and Beyond, talked about plant-based eating as well. And obviously this time of the year, that's the best time to talk about plant-based eating here in Iowa because we have all these seasonal fruits and vegetables available for us. My spin is going to be a little bit different than hers as far as like policy and research is what she focused on. And I have been a clinical dietitian through all my career. So I tend to focus on things like what patients tell me or what I hear from patients and ways that I can make a difference in their cancer journey by making good suggestions about different foods to eat. So what is plant forward eating? This is something that's kind of a new term, and a lot of times it gets mixed up with other terms regarding eating patterns. So basically a plant forward eating pattern is a dietary or eating pattern that relies primarily on foods that come from plants, but does not eliminate meat. And so that is different than vegetarian or vegan, which we're going to talk about here in a little while. So as dietitians in the last 5 to 10 years or so, we've kind of gone away from lingo of talking about diets or good foods or bad foods and have gone more towards being focused on eating patterns because there tends to be a negative connotation to diets as far as being restrictive, what you can't have, versus eating patterns. It's more proactive, what you can eat or what things we recommend to make your diet better. So the most notable group of eating, most notable eating pattern as dietitians that we know of and that we talk about are called the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. And I just show this because it is quite the document. It's 150 pages. It comes out every 5 years, and it's put out by the USDA and the Department of Health and Human Services. And what they do is they get nutrition experts together, crunch the data, and try to make recommendations, guidelines for people to follow to eat better. And there's a couple reasons why they do this every 5 years. First of all, they know that the foods and beverages that Americans consume have a profound effect on their health. The other thing is that we know that health or dietary eating patterns tend to be different at every stage. And so this year was the first year they actually included, besides just adults, they've included children and toddlers. They've also included other subcategories of the population that have not been addressed in the past. Again, I said these have gone on since 1980, but the reason why we keep this is because we see that people are not necessarily following the guidelines that they put out there. So they try to tweak them, make them more consumer friendly, do whatever we can to make sure that people are eating better, healthier to prevent chronic diseases like cancer, but also heart disease, Alzheimer's, obesity. All of those things have a profound impact on the health of our nation. So the difference between plant-forward eating and other eating patterns like vegetarian and vegan is slight. So, but significant. So when we're talking about vegetarian diet, that's going to be primarily people who eat plants, no meat, but they can eat eggs and dairy. Vegan takes it a step further in that the diet is entirely plant-based. So there is no meat, no fish, no dairy, and basically anything that comes from an animal. Again, plant forward is neither of those two. It's making sure that people emphasize plants in their diets, but also there's a place for those other foods like meat and dairy, but more as a secondary role. So eating patterns that support plant-forward eating, the most common one that we think of as dietitians and also the public, it's becoming more and more popular, is the Mediterranean eating pattern. So the Mediterranean eating pattern is a pattern that was originated around the Mediterranean Sea. It's high in fruits and vegetables and oils and olive oil, nuts and seeds with some fish, but meat plays a much minor role in this dietary pattern. It is the prominent way of eating of the whole blue zones with Dan Blutner, who which is has been a very popular book, and he looked at certain pockets of the world and how they ate and how they lived and why they lived. A lot of them lived to be over 100 years old, and the Mediterranean meal plan was a part of that. The Mediterranean eating plan is the most, that was ranked the #1 eating plan by the US News and World Report, which is a consumer-based rating system that looks at all kinds of dietary plans with health in mind and with health professionals judging them. And it was rated #1 as far as eating patterns that they recommend. The second one that I recommend, or that we hear a lot about more commonly recently, is called this flexitarian diet. So I'm not usually somebody to promote one particular thing over another, but this is a term that a lot of people have not heard of before. Flexitarian diet is basically a concept that's developed by a registered dietitian named Dawn Bladner. This diet is also plant-focused, plant-centered, but it comes from the word flexible and vegetarian. So that's really the concept of this particular meal plan. It focuses on plants, grains, fruits and vegetables, but also takes into account that we all are going to live our life and we're going to have that picnic or that birthday party or something that we're going to be eating meat or something that's not a vegetable. So that is also a very good resource to follow for a plant-based or plant-forward eating pattern. The other one that I like to recommend is the New American Plate. And the New American Plate is actually put out by the American Institute of Cancer Research. Again, it uses, I'm all about props and pictures, so I'll be holding things up as we talk here, but it uses a 10-inch dinner plate to emphasize how people are supposed to eat. So this is actually the size of the plate that people are supposed to use. And it's a very easy pictorial way to emphasize how you should divide up the foods that you're eating. So basically half of the plate, fruit and vegetables, a quarter of the plate, another quarter of the plate, grains. So 3/4 of the total plate should be from plant-based foods. And then there's a place for not only protein, but this plate doesn't show it, but there's also a section for dairy as well. So this is used by not only the New American Plate, the concept is, but also the My Plate eating pattern that's recommended by the USDA as well. I will have a list of resources for people that are here, and then I'll have it posted on the Cancer Education Series website after my presentation. So if you're interested in these resources that I have here, they'll all be available for you through contact with me. So which eating patterns don't promote plant-forward eating? These are the ones that we hear pretty commonly in our culture. One of them is the ketogenic diet. So the ketogenic diet is basically a diet plan that severely limits most carbohydrates in favor of protein and fat. So that would not be an eating pattern that would support plant forward eating. The other one is the one that's most common in the United States, and it's called the Standard American Diet, which is the acronym for that is SAD, Standard American Diet. And unfortunately, that's the diet that a large majority of our population here in the United States eats. It's a diet that's high in protein and saturated fats. It's high in processed foods. It's low in fresh carbs or complex carbohydrates, higher in processed carbs or simple carbs, which are things that we don't recommend. And again, low in fruits and vegetables. So some general statistics that I wanted to share about the Standard American Diet. Processed foods make up about 70% of the Standard American Diet, which is a huge amount. That statistic I actually had to go back and double check because it seemed like a very large amount. So processed foods, there's a couple of different ways of looking at processed foods. You can look at minimally processed foods, which are things like bagged spinach. It could be roasted nuts or canned fruits and vegetables. So again, they've been altered a little bit, but not majorly. Heavily processed foods are the things that we think of: pizza, candy, cookies, frozen meals. Those are heavily processed foods. And so that 70% includes all of those heavily processed and minimally processed foods. It contains too much red meat in the Standard American Diet, too much saturated fat, and too few high quality carbs, which again are the things that are in the garden here: fruits and vegetables, whole grains, which should really be the basis of the diet. Less than 1/3 of calories from the Standard American Diet come from high quality carbs. 9% of Americans get the recommended servings of vegetables a day, and only 12% get the recommended servings of fruits a day. So you can see there's a lot of room for improvement. So what are the recommendations for plant forward eating pattern? There are different amounts recommended for different calorie levels. However, middle of the line, what is recommended for most adults would be 1.5 to 2 cups of fruits a day and 2 to 3 cups of vegetables a day. So again, that food group that we eat the least of, we're really estimating or really wanting people to eat the most of. So that goes to about 5 to 10 servings a day. So however, portions are reasonable. Small amounts like 1 cup of berries or greens are considered a serving, 1/2 cup of juice or canned fruit. Or if it's fresh whole fruit, it's about the size of a tennis ball. So as dietitians, we tend to recommend less processed carbohydrates or less processed fruits and vegetables. So I always use an example of an apple with my patients. So the more fiber, the less processing. So an apple's got the most amount of fiber, applesauce has the second amount, and then apple juice goes all the way to the bottom. Doesn't mean that there's not a place for all 3 of those things in the diet, but of course we're always pushing fiber as being really important. So all forms can work. I talk to my patients about the inclusion of not only just the fresh produce we see here, but frozen and canned as well can fit. Number one, a lot of times people can't afford fresh produce. Buying in season, as Lindy talked about at the last nutrition presentation, tends to be the most economical and the best for you. But there's nothing wrong with frozen or canned. Also, don't forget spices. Behind me, I've got fresh basil and cilantro. And spices add a lot to the diet as far as not just flavor, but lots of nutrients. They are plants, and there is a definite place as far as a partial serving size for including spices in your diet as well. Grains should be whole grains. At least half of the grains that you eat as whole should be whole grains. One of my jobs in the past was working as a food school service director, and we had a terrible time in getting kids to eat whole grains. But what I tell the people I work with and what I worked with the kids with is any recipe that you use half whole grains. So if you're making a macaroni or a pasta, use half white pasta and use half whole grains. It changes the flavor profile a little bit, but not significantly, until you can work up to 100% whole grains if that's your goal. So sometimes it's those small, subtle changes that really make a difference. And we're going to talk about those a little bit more at the end of the presentation. So I try to tell my patients to try to use as few processed grains as possible. When they process it, usually they process out the fiber, they process out the B vitamins. And a lot of foods can be fortified, which means they add it back in, but it's just best to get it in the first place in the form of whole grains. I also tell my patients, don't forget protein-based or plant-based protein foods. So those would be things like beans, nuts, nut butters, seeds, soybeans. These are all really good plant protein sources that can be added into the diet that not only count as your protein, but they count as your vegetable too, which is great. Some of them do, I should say. And then don't forget about healthy fats in the form of plant fats. So canola oil, olive oil, grapeseed oil. There's a whole bunch of plant oils that are also beneficial for the body as well. So why do we talk about a plant-based diet as dietitians? Especially me working in the cancer center, it's something that I do spend time with my patients about, both the patients that are going through treatment and are trying to prevent the recurrence of possibly a secondary cancer. And so we talk about plants and how they are very anti-inflammatory. So they tend to ward off inflammation, which contributes to not only just cancer, but heart disease. They have done a lot of research about even some of like dementia and Alzheimer's. And they feel like a plant-forward diet can be very beneficial for those chronic diseases as well. Also, there's lots of fiber in foods, and we know since I've been a baby dietitian back in the early, I shouldn't date myself, but back in the 80s, we talked about fiber as being nature's broom, and so it really gets into the colon, helps to clean out the colon through your toxins, and so we know that people that have a higher fiber diet tend to have better digestion. We're thinking they clear toxins from the system better and keep the colon nice and healthy. Besides the vitamins and minerals in fruits and vegetables, Lindy talked about this before, and I do actually have a list for people who are here or people who are interested online of phytochemicals. And phytochemicals, it's just a fancy word for a plant chemical. There are things that there's a lot of research being done on them. There are no recommended levels of these plant chemicals, but we think they do really important things in the body. We think they work synergistically with vitamins and minerals to work. We think that they just help fight off disease because of the inherent properties of the plant itself. So the things that make chives smell like chives, or texture and color of these phytochemicals, they tend to be the things that also our body can incorporate into our chemistry and help to ward off cancer and disease as well. So the thing about these phytochemicals is they're not in nutrition supplements. So playing right into that, I just brought up a couple scenarios of things that I often hear with my patients as I'm doing counseling. I have a lot of people that will say to me, when I do a diet history, ask what they eat, food frequency, ask kind of about their eating habits and their eating pattern. A lot of times patients will say to me, you know, Barb, I'm not so much like a fruit and vegetable person. I'm kind of a meat and potatoes guy or a meat and potatoes gal. And so like, would it be okay for me to take a supplement? Would I get what I need from taking a supplement? So the first thing I tell them is that the supplements don't have these phytochemicals in them. They're made in the lab, they're processed in the lab. They don't have the same exact ingredients that you're going to find in fruits and vegetables. The other thing that I've actually been having a little bit more questions about as far as supplements go are the supplements that are the freeze-dried supplements. So things like Juice Plus, or Balance of Nature, which is advertised on TV. People will see these ads and say, you know, what about these? Can I add these into my diet? Will that cover my fruits and vegetables? And so the research on these is still out. I don't necessarily say that it's a bad thing, but I still, as dietitians, we're food pushers. And so if I can have people try to figure out how to add more fruits and vegetables in their diet, that's what I shoot for first. So, the other thing about these supplements is we all know from going to the store and looking through the supplement aisles, they can be very expensive. So foods are cheaper, especially if bought in season. So I really try to get people to try to incorporate more fruits and vegetables rather than just take a supplement and think that they're covered 100%. So one of the things that I'm known for as a dietitian and as a presenter is that I like to bring visual aids for my presentation and things that will get people thinking about how to eat and incorporate more healthy things in their diet. So the first thing is what I have up here, and this is actually a nice little set that I picked up at one of the discount stores actually. And it's for people who take their lunch or for people that just need help with trying to visualize good serving sizes of foods. This actually has a container for fruits and vegetables are at the bottom. So they're going to be the biggest containers with lids on them. So you can take them places, protein, carbs, healthy fats, and dressings. So these are a really easy way for somebody that's trying to look like, how do I start and how do I visualize what a cup looks like, etc. It's a good place to start. And you can find these at any stores or on Amazon or online somewhere. The other thing that I have found are these green bags. And again, I'm not promoting one product over another. This is just the one that I found. It is actually a green bag that is BPA free. It is reusable, and it's a bag that you can put produce in and put it in the refrigerator or keep it on your countertop. And its job is to help keep your produce lasting longer. So I've actually used these personally. I've used them with berries, I've used them with bananas and greens, and they really do work. So that's another kind of barrier to eating more fruits and vegetables is I'll have a lot of people say, you know, Barb, I really want to do this, but I get all excited about it. I buy all these fruits and vegetables. I put them in my crisper in my refrigerator, and that's where they go. That's where they go bad. So this is one thing that can help with that situation. The other thing that I talk to people about is don't ever put your fruit and vegetable, even though the company will tell you it's okay to do that and it's better to do that, is to put it in the crisper. Put it in nice bowls and put it in the refrigerator and display it and make it readily visible. So when you open the refrigerator and you say, what can I have for a snack? You've got a whole bunch of food, healthy produce that's ready to go and ready for a snack. I do often tell my patients don't necessarily wash it ahead of time. So put it in there and then as you need it, wash it, because if you wash it ahead of time, sometimes that can work to degrade the produce. And so wash it as you go rather than wash it, display it in a nice bowl and eat it from there. Some other things that I recommend to people are to just start out trying one new fruit or one new vegetable a day, especially if they're not big on produce. It tends to simplify things. It tends to cut down being overwhelmed with all these fruits and vegetables and maybe not either liking them or knowing what to do with them. But then with time and over time to increase servings by 1 or 2 servings each week. So if I can get people to eat one fruit, one vegetable at every meal, I feel like I'm doing really well. So fruits usually are not trouble for people to incorporate in, but I'll have a lot of patients who will have pretty particular vegetable preferences or dislikes, I should say. So what we'll usually start with that's simple, something that they like, even if it's corn, peas, or beans, which tend to be the vegetables that are most popular here in Iowa. So I'll just say, be consistent with those, get those in your diet every day, and then let's branch out. Let's try some carrots. Let's try some broccoli. Let's try some avocado. A lot of times people will be reluctant to try new things because they've never tried it before. So just trying a piece of it or just one serving of it to see how they like it. Even as a dietitian, I have stories personally that I had never tried an avocado until I was a much older adult than I'd like to admit. My brother was having it. He's like, "You've never tried avocado on a cracker with a small piece of ham?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "You got to try this. It's awesome." And I was amazed. But it was one of those vegetables that I kind of said, I don't think because of the texture, I'm going to probably like that. And now it's like one of my favorite vegetables. Same thing with Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower. A lot of times it's the way you're preparing it. As a kid, my mom was awesome at pushing vegetables on our plate. And we had a vegetable at our dinner plate at every meal. However, some of the ways that she cooked back in the 60s and 70s, she boiled everything. So I had boiled Brussels sprouts and I thought they were awful. However, as an adult and as a dietitian, we know there's lots of different ways, more inventive ways that we can prepare those now. And one of my favorite ways to make vegetables is to roast them. Not always the best thing to do in Iowa in the summer to use the oven, but in the winter, I will cut up Brussels sprouts and beets and sweet potatoes and just make sure all the pieces are about the same size. I put them in about a 300 to a 400 degree oven for about a half hour on a piece of tin foil with the vegetables. I chop up and I mix them with olive oil and salt and pepper, and I just roast them. And I will make a whole sheet pan or maybe 2 sheet pans for the entire week. And I'll put it in a Rubbermaid container or a Tupperware container and just eat off that all week. I have found that I love eggs and sweet potatoes. Who would have ever thought that eggs and sweet potatoes taste good together? But it's a healthier version than hash browns. And it's really easy to make. So sometimes I'll just do a pan of sweet potatoes and use that throughout the week. So there's lots of little tips like that that make incorporating fruits and vegetables into your diet more easy. Breakfast veggies tend to be the things that I'll have patients struggle with. Like, okay, I'm on it with this vegetables at every meal, but what do I do for breakfast? So that's where avocado on toast comes into play, and that's very popular right now. It's a very trendy thing to do. I use Trader Joe's everything but the bagel seasoning on that avocado toast, and it is delicious. It is very good. Also, you can do peppers and onions and tomatoes and put those into omelets. I am notorious for putting a handful of spinach in a smoothie. You can't taste it. And even my most reluctant patients will give me that and say, you're right, Barb, I really didn't taste it, especially if you mix it with stronger flavored berries. So that's an idea. I've had a lot of people do breakfast tacos where they mix in beans and onions and cilantro and combine that with eggs and a little bit of cheese. And that's a healthy way to get some veggies at breakfast. One of the things that Lindy talked about was joining a CSA, a community supported agricultural group. And there's lots of them here in Central Iowa. Basically, you can sign up for a box of vegetables that are produced locally. A lot of them are produced organically. And you can get that either delivered or usually people pick them up. And then that group of vegetables are the vegetables they use for the week. I have done this myself, and I found it's a great way to get people to try vegetables that they might be reluctant to try when they're already in the box. Sometimes they come with recipes. So that's another great idea to sign up for a CSA if you're interested in increasing produce in your diet. I do have some information about organics. A lot of that is a question I often will get asked by my patients is, is it better to eat organic versus conventionally grown produce? And as dietitians, the first thing that we say is whatever is going to get you eating more produce is what you need to eat. For some people, budgetary constraints don't allow them to eat all organic. Now, there is something put out by the Environmental Working Group. It's called EWG.org. And they promote something called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. And every year they will rate fruits and vegetables based on their pesticide content. And so the Clean 15 are the ones that are the lowest pesticide content of fruits and vegetables that they've evaluated that year. And the Dirty Dozen are the ones that have the most pesticides. So for people that want to eat organic, that want to eat clean, that would be a really good resource. And I actually do have it on a handout here for people that are here, or you can ask for that online as well. I have found that to be very helpful, and it kind of allows people to make choices based on what is recommended between those two financially, what's best for them. Also, I do recommend people stocking up in season. As dietitians, we recommend buying produce in season because it's healthier. Or it's healthy, I should say, and it's cheaper. And so if I see there's a big sale on blueberries or a big sale on any type of berries, or I've even bought bagged spinach at the grocery store and just thrown it right into the freezer. And then it's all ready to go in any recipe. All I do is take it out, I will crush it up and put it in whatever recipe, whether that be a smoothie or a pasta. And that is the bagged spinach that's all cleaned and ready to go. There is a website called Meatless Mondays, and is a website that's been around for 10 years, and they promote plant-based eating on Mondays. So taking meat out of the diet completely on Mondays. They've got great resources and lots of recipes on that website. So if you're interested in making Monday your meatless day, that would be the place to go for more information. So with that, I think, how is my time? I'm looking at my time. I've got some time here. I'm going to go up to the cancer garden where we started, and that's with 4 raised beds. I will go up there and I'll show you what's growing there today. Unfortunately, because of our setup, we couldn't really take a good look around the garden, what's here. But I did want to show the audience what our raised garden beds look like, and where we're actually growing vegetables here at the cancer garden. So I'll ask Dr. Deming to come in and sit down and take some time while I run up there, and then we can take some questions from the audience.
Great, thank you, Barb. And I hope we get to do some tasting tonight as well.
Yes, we will.
All right, good. So we're gonna take the camera and we're gonna go up to the garden. And we're gonna see what's growing in our garden. So let's see here.
Yes. Can you hear me,
Chris, are you or this camera?
Cars are going by right now. This is an urban garden. So our garden is right off of University Avenue, which is one of the main thoroughfares to Clive. It was never a consideration that we would put a garden here. It was the land that we had, and we hear life going on around us, and sometimes that means fire trucks. So these are the raised beds that we built with the very first seed money that we got from the MercyOne Auxiliary. So these plans are available if anyone's interested. I don't have the exact dimensions of these, but they're pretty good size. The thing that we wanted was that when patients or people came to pick or use this garden as therapeutic exercise, that they wouldn't have to stoop over very much or bend down. So you can see that everything here is just at kind of thigh height for me. Might be a little higher or lower depending on your height. But right now in the garden, what we do is we, for the most part, will switch our produce every year as far as rotating crops. So one year the tomatoes might be here. This year they're over at our bed behind. And what that does is helps with the soil nutrients. We recondition the soil every year. But every plant takes different things out of the soil. So by rotating our crops here in the beds, we feel like it helps with the nutrition background of the food that we're producing. So we have green beans here. These are a vegetable that grow pretty rapidly. We planted this garden, I'm trying to think, I think it was May 15th. So you can see that these are mature plants. They are bearing fruit already. So one of the main things that we do with this cancer garden as far as education goes is all the produce that we produce here, we take inside the cancer center. We pick it, and sometimes our volunteers like Judy, our cancer volunteer who's here today, we pick the produce, we label the produce, we put it out for people who are going through treatment to take. And so we find it's a great way to introduce fruits and vegetables that people may or may not have tried. We put out recipes with it. So people who might be looking at, gee, I've never tried cauliflower, I've never had Brussels sprouts before, kind of how to cook those. And it's really, as a dietitian, it's so satisfying because I do see patients actually here at the Cancer Center to go out and see people going through our basket like, wow, they have chives, or I've been looking for oregano, or what should we have with these green beans? So it's been a very great way to kind of bring produce directly to the consumers that we're trying to reach. So green beans are here. I'm not sure with this camera what you can see of me, but we have tomatoes back here. One of the things that we did this year, which I love, and we had an intern do this as a project, is we actually came up with a laminated sheet, showed what the produce was, showed when they were planted, when we expect them harvested, how to store them, and some nutrition information. So it's point of contact with whoever's out here looking around as far as what that produce has as far as nutrients. So like for tomatoes, it said tomatoes are a great source of vitamin C and vitamin A. The skin of the tomato holds most of the nutrients and the flavonoids. When it's cooked, it releases more lycopene, which is good for people to know. And then just how to cook it. So there's just, it's a one sheet piece of information that not only has what the product is, how to take care of it, but there's also in the bottom here, says that this produce, when it's ripe and ready to go, is available inside the Cancer Center on the first floor for you to take free of charge. So it's our way of promoting kind of what we do out here, and also the benefits of a plant-based diet. So I don't know if you can see behind me at all. We do have Brussels sprouts growing. I think Dr. Deming was actually questioning me about Brussels sprouts. He drove by one day and he said, "Barb, out in the garden, you've got something growing. It's tall." And what is that? And a lot of times people don't know what things are. I didn't know how Brussels sprouts grew either until I was a dietitian, but they grow on a long stalk. And they don't produce their fruit until later in the summer or fall. So usually they're the last thing that we take out of the garden, and Crystal and I, or the volunteers, are out here and we're pulling Brussels sprouts out and stuff in bags to put in the Cancer Center. But it does generate a lot of interest. And like I said, it's a beautiful, serene place to come. So I'm excited that you could join me here tonight, and I think I will entertain some questions now. Dr. Deming, you want to come up here?
Yeah, I remember that day that I drove by here, and it was like, I had honestly never seen Brussels sprouts grown before. Yep. They're fascinating, and they're great too.
Yep.
So lots of good things. So the garden provides at least three things I can think of, and probably more. Number one, I mean, just being in nature.
Yes.
And there's lots of research, just being around trees and greenery. We don't always know what we're absorbing, but as you and I are here breathing, we're breathing in chemicals from the trees. And
right.
There's more and more evidence that just being in nature provides health. Second, gardening is great physical activity.
It is.
And unlike, going to the gym and just pumping weights, you actually exert yourself, use your muscles, and you get something positive to show for it besides your physical activity. And then third, obviously, we're creating something that is healthy and nutritious, and all three of those things are good for the mind, body, spirit.
Yep.
One thing that I was thinking about with your presentation is obviously a lot of the vegetables can be eaten raw,
right?
But some vegetables are more appealing raw, and some just taste better cooked. One thing that I found is I tend not to cook ahead of time, but I have found that having like one really good pan that you can sort of just saute or roast on top of the stove.
Yep.
And it's amazing how quickly, with a good pan that conducts heat, that within 15 minutes you can prepare a bunch of vegetables, some olive oil, a little bit of seasoning, and have something that turns into really a great meal in a very short period of time. You don't have to microwave everything.
No.
And a really good pan that gets something nice and hot and sauteed, and cooking it less amount of time is good. So just wondering about, you talked about roasting.
Yes, roasting.
And that's good, but that might take an hour or so.
Right, it takes about a half hour or so with a high temperature oven, right? So yeah, definitely sauteing on the oven or on the stove is a very easier, quicker way to go. We do kind of watch, olive oil is one of those oils that it can spurt a lot when it's cooking. And so I don't always recommend olive oil on the stove. I'll recommend more of a canola oil or one of those ones that have a lower smoke point. So, but yeah, I think it's a great way. I don't have a specific pan necessarily to recommend. I like nonstick pan where you can actually use less oil. The thing about vegetables and fruits is that a lot of these, especially fruits or vegetables, excuse me, is that sometimes using a little bit of oil actually helps unlock some of the nutrients. So we'll recommend just using some oil with the vegetable. So yeah. So I think that's a good way. Microwaving is okay. There's nothing bad about microwaving. You don't have to worry about that, but it is a little bit more of a art to do that right without overcooking or undercooking, depending on your microwave. Yeah.
And it doesn't maybe add as much flavor to something as a little bit. So are you going to show us some of the individual?
So I think,
here?
you know what, because
Are
of
we
the
gonna
fact that
ask-
we're not moving around a bunch, I think we just, we're gonna stop here, but Judy, who is one of our.
Yeah, let's bring Judy. Judy, come on up.
Well, I think we're gonna go over to that area because we've got an area of the garden that we kind of want to showcase. It's an area of the garden that we have not had a whole bunch of success having things grown because there's a large water tower that nobody online can see, but it blocks the sun in this one area.
Okay.
So Judy has been a huge support of the cancer garden, and so we are going to go over there, and I think she's just going to say a couple words of we've got an area that we want to do some planning, and we've got a special way to involve cancer survivors in that area.
Great. So we have a plan. So we're going to go over to that side.
Yep.
So bear with us for a minute.
We're moving.
We're going to go to another camera. Here we go.
All right, Judy.
And I see. Here's the spot. Hey, everybody. Come on in, Barb and Judy. So I'll be cameraman here and make sure you guys are both. So Judy, if you could go over by Barb.
So this particular area of the garden has been something that we have tried to put produce into. We've tried sweet potatoes, zucchini, cucumbers, a whole bunch of things, and it doesn't grow very well. But it's a lovely place this time of the day. It's shady. And so what we're wanting to do is create another reflective, shady area for Peak Cancer Center to sit on a bench with a loved one, get some rest, some solace. And so Judy is an artist, and she and I talked about this area, and we came up with, I have it upside down, everyone. This plan where you walk in onto some limestone. There's a bench at the back, and then we thought putting hostas in these areas with a little bit of plants, colored plants, would be a lovely idea. So, Judy, I'm going to have you talk about what we're talking about, what we want for hostas.
Well, the main concept, as Barb mentioned, was to plant something that would grow. Things have not grown at all in the garden. So I think it's a combination of not enough light and soil. It's not really good. So the one thing that we kind of zeroed in on was hostas. Hostas will grow in the shade. Matter of fact, they kind of like shade. And also, green from May or June until October. So that's a real plus. And then we also have strategized some on other flowers. Barb and I both agree that we want color in the garden in addition to just the hostas. So the hostas will be the focal point. This will all be hostas. Okay. And there's so many kinds. Some of them are like 6 feet across and blue, and some of them are, a couple feet across, and some of them even have little red tinges in them. So we're very excited about the hostas. And also, some of the things we've talked about is getting some climbing roses, because we do want some height, as Barb pointed out, so that we don't see that water tower quite so much. And then we'll also be putting probably some daisies. This is just a little illustration of some of the daisies we may put in. Some of the plants we're considering are Coneflowers, which I brought a couple illustrations of white coneflowers, astilbes, which we already have in our garden over there, and then some daisies and bleeding hearts, which we also have in the main garden. So the focus is going to be on the hostas, and what we're going to do in the next few months is contact various within the, and people who have, you know, been a part of particularly the Ed series, but also anyone that has been involved in cancer care at Mercy. And we're going to ask that they bring in the early fall hostas that they may have. Anyone that has hostas know they kind of like to produce. So we're going to plant hostas in here. The limestone bench, I think, would be a very big focal point. It will be 100% central Iowa native limestone. The bench will be a big slab with a place to rest your shoulders. And we're still working on the plants. So anyway, let your friends know that we would love to have some of their hostas in the early fall. We're hoping we have a surplus because then we're going to do fundraising. So we will be, you know, selling our hostas. But we're really excited about it. And hopefully it'll add another element. I guess my vision kind of is that it will become a place of serenity. There'll be no vegetables at all. You know, like Barb said, you love when they come and sit on the bench and reminisce about the wonderful care you're getting at Mercy. Or you may cry, you know. Anyway, it's a place where you can just hang out with people you love. Enjoy.
Thanks, Judy. Judy and I have become good friends through her help, her generous help and donation of her time here at the Cancer Center to the garden. She has a passion for gardening and for flowers and for fruits and vegetables. And she also has been one of my best pupils, I would say. She really embraced a plant-based diet and made super great changes in her diet. This is what she preaches. So it's been lovely to have you here. So thanks everyone for coming. Hope that if you're interested in donating some hosta at the end of this growing season, that you think of us here at Mercy Cancer Center. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Barb and Judy. So been an interesting program for sure, and I've certainly learned a few things, and I'm sure our audience has as well. So this was recorded and will be part of our cancer education series that we have online on our YouTube channel. Above and Beyond Cancer is all you need to do. Type in that address and look it up on YouTube, and it will be there. All the series will be there for you. So the other thing to think about is that you could also view these on the MercyOne Cancer Center website. Just type in Cancer Education Series. So we look forward to seeing you next week when we'll be back indoors and things will be a little less chaotic. So I hope everybody enjoyed the presentation tonight. Thanks again.